I'll just call you Verth. All right. So when you're making these changes, right, you want to make sure your game isn't running, right? So if you have your game running, just exit it. Do you play APB through Steam or Gamers First? Not Steam. Okay, so Gamers First then. All right. First things first, because you will be editing game files, right, that deal with code in their files, you want to download something called Notepad++. I have it right here. It's a very small file or application in general, and it's completely free. And I'll put the link for that. Hold on. Notepad++, there, downloads. I guess this one. Let me copy it. And this is the latest version, so download that. Click on the installer that's below the download button and go through the setup process on that and just keep everything default. Just make sure you put the desktop icon um, on the desktop. But once you do that, uh, you'll have this, and this is what you'll be using to edit the game files, right? So I'll open this up. You can also open it up as well. You will be editing two files, your apbengine.ini and baseengine.ini. Both of these files are located in, and you said you're not doing it through Steam, so it's going to be in your C drive, program files, gamers first, APB reloaded. Uh, One of the files is an APB game, config, and this right here, APB engine. And I will also type it out in case I'm going super fast for you. So program files, x86. Can I just copy this? Wait. There you go. All right. So that's the first file. Open it with Notepad++. If it doesn't work, open up Notepad++, go into File, Open, and then search for the file, and then open it that way. So either way works. No. I just put that there in case I was going fast and you needed to know where you were being, where you had to open the file from. But that's one file. The other file is called base engine, and that is located in engine config. And that's this file right here. So open that up as well. Right? And once you have both of those files open, it should be right here. APB engine and base engine. So go into either of the files. So in this case, we'll start with base engine. Press Control plus F. So it'll bring up the find box thingy. And you're finding, right? You're finding the word frame. Capital F R-A-M-E. Click find next. And every time there's a word in the file that's associated with the keyword frame, it'll highlight it. So just keep looking. You're trying to find the frame rate stuff. So just keep pressing find next until you find it. So here it is. Yours probably looks different because it's not edited, but you probably don't have this part, and you probably have something that looks like this, right? So whatever the default value was for here, just change that to 30 or 60. Whatever the default value for this thing is, change that to 0. And your max client frame rate, change that to 0. And then Control F again to find. Click find next. And so it was right here, and then it went down here. Went down here, and this one. Change that to 30 or 60. I think default is 35 or something, so just change it to 60. Once that is completed, so whatever values you put in this first file, whether it's the base engine or the APB engine, whichever first file you put your values in, make sure you copy those same values into the other file. So for example, you say you put 60 right here, and then you have 500 here and 500 here, for example. Then make sure you put those same values in the other file. So you go to the other file, Control F, frame, find next, 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 right here. Put those same values in for all three of these. So if you had 30 over here from the other file, put 30. If you had, whatever. Just make sure it's the same values, right? So in your case, it'll be 0, 0, and this is like 30 or 60. Find next, and over here put 60. Once you have both of that completed, over here at the top, you'll notice that it's a red color, right? So by default, when you open a file, it's a blue floppy disk or whatever. It changes to red whenever you make a change in it. All you have to do is save the file at that point, and you'll also notice that whenever you edit a line, you'll start seeing like orange, a bar or something, which basically indicates that you made a change in the file line. And all you have to do is save the file. So just press Control plus S, and it'll save it. Or you can just go in File and Save. Either way works. Control S is faster and easier. So just make sure you save the base engine file so it's, instead of red, it's blue. And then save this file as well. And go back into your APB reloaded folder. Right? Go into binaries. And this right here, apb.exe, the actual application. Just right click on that. If you're using any Windows that's not 11, then you can just click at the bottom. It says properties. But if you're in Windows 11, just click on show more options and then click properties. Well, actually, not properties yet. We skipped a step. So yeah, go into send to desktop create shortcut. So if you're Windows 11, show more options, send to desktop create shortcut. And if you're, like I said, if you're not running Windows 11, you should have this whenever you right click. So just select send to desktop create shortcut. And basically it'll put a shortcut of APB in your desktop view. Like so. Okay. It says it's playing an ad or something. I'm not sure. But let me know if an ad plays so I can stop talking. That way I don't skip anything. Yes. But before you open it, go into the icon, click on properties, and this right here. Type that in. So at the end of the target, right behind the quotation marks, put one space. So press spacebar one time, and then type in dash language = 1031. Yeah, I can. Okay, so this is with the space. So you don't have to put a space in there. Just make sure you copy the whole thing. But just make sure you have at least, one space right after the quotation mark and then paste it. Technically, this part right here deals with the kill feed. So, the custom color and all that stuff, as well as the mission stage names and all that stuff if you're running that kind of config. Otherwise, there's no point in you using it. But this part right here, a dash sign and then no movies written right after that. That basically disables the movies that play when you launch up APB Reloaded, so it cuts that waiting time. And it basically speeds up the process of loading your game. So And that's pretty much it. And then basically you start the game up from that icon that you created the shortcut. Now, one thing to note is that whenever APB releases an update, at which point, when you try to, whenever you start a game up from the shortcut thing, you go into it, you log into the menu, and it'll give you an error saying that your game is not up to date or whatever. If it tells you that, that means you need to run the APB launcher and update your game. So just run the APB launcher, and that's also in the same folder. Gamers First, APB Reloaded launcher, right here, APB launcher. Just make sure you run that. It'll update the game. You could hit repair at the bottom if you want to, but you would have to repeat the process of editing the file code and putting in the frame rate values and stuff like that. So if you have a hard time remembering, I'd suggest you write it down somewhere in your note or something, in Notepad, so that way you don't forget. But basically, you do that for every single update, and usually APB runs an update every week on Wednesdays. So I don't know what it is recently because we haven't really received any update that forces you to change or update your game. At least I haven't yet. So another thing to note is that just because you move, or just because you set a couple values, quantitative values inside a file, doesn't mean you will get those exact values in terms of FPS. Of course, your monitor, your refresh rate, aka your display hertz, also plays a factor. What kind of hardware you're running also plays a factor. So, for example, your CPU, RAM, GPU, etc. Right? So, just because you add any custom numbers in and whatnot doesn't mean you'll get those exact numbers in terms of frame. But those are some things to keep in mind. Yeah. If it's done correctly, it should work. I mean, I have it and I use it, so I know it works. So, the start of the game, type in /FPS. So, as soon as you log in into your character, when you're on the default district select screen, just type /FPS. You don't have to go into a district and type it. So, yeah, for sure, no worries. You're welcome. I had the clip made, and that's why I told you about it, to go check it out on my channel. Uh, but unfortunately, it's set as a private video, and for some reason, I can't change it to public. So, also, if you haven't, I recommend you to turn on your two-factor authentication just for security purposes, and not get your account hacked. Technically, you should have it for anything that allows you to have a two-factor authentication on. You should definitely have it. And of course, you should be changing your passwords every 3 or 6 months. So, right. So I'm here, right? So I could just go and type /FPS and boom. Yeah, I'll see what I can do about it. Since I did it today and it's on this current stream, I'll probably go back into it Thursday before I start streaming, and then clip the whole thing and then make it public from this current VOD. But that's pretty much it. If you've done it right, it should say 0 FPS right here, which means that it's set to unlimited. So you're currently outputting the maximum frames that your hardware can output, basically, is what that means. One thing you will notice, since you uncapped your frames, right? Since the game default is at 128 frames, when you go above 128 frames and you move your character, it's going to start sliding left and right, and it sometimes shows up in the game while you're playing. Sometimes it doesn't. But your character will start to slide, and that's because you uncapped your frames. And the only way to fix that is to set it back to the default value. So I recommend you just get used to it at that point. And yes, because your character is moving when you're trying to stand still, it's going to affect your crosshair. It's going to, mess with the recoil and whatnot. So Yeah. Yeah. So technically, aside from 140, like you say you have 144 hertz, so obviously that would be 144 frames. But if you have really decent hardware, you should be getting more than 144 frames. Just make sure you go into options and you have VSync and smooth frame rate unchecked. So make sure both of these options are unchecked and click OK. Another thing I recommend you to do is make sure you have it set to your maximum refresh rate. So if you have a NVIDIA graphics cards, go into, if you have a, NVIDIA graphics cards, you should have this thing, NVIDIA control panel. Run it as admin. Wait for the thing to load up. And right here in the change resolution part of display, uh, you can change your refresh rate to the maximum that's allowed. So in your case, you said 144 hertz, so just make sure it's at 144 hertz. If you have it that's higher than 144 hertz, that means your monitor supports something that's higher than 144 hertz and you probably didn't know about it. Worst case scenario. But just make sure you have it set to the highest value. And then at the bottom here, you can just click apply and OK. But that's pretty much it. Now, being it's APB reloaded that we're talking about here, it's not going to be a stable frame. You're going to get some cuts, some, dips and frames here and there, uh, especially during like moments where it's a lot of gunfire or explosions and stuff like that. So you probably dip some frames there, but that's just APB at that point. No worries, bro.